Good morning, and welcome to the First Universalist Church of Yarmouth. My name is Andrew Tonks, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors. I'm so happy to be greeting you this morning, live from the sanctuary. I can feel you with me, with us, and it feels good. So welcome. Unfortunately, our music director, Sam Chandler, is unable to be with us today due to transportation issues, and he's recorded some music for us. At First Universalist, our mission is to explore our faith, embrace this community, and to engage the world as spiritual seekers. Won't you take those words to heart? Before our service begins this morning, I do have one announcement, and that is, as a member and representative of the Worship Council and the Anti-Racism Working Group, I want to invite you to our Zoom at 11:30. We have set up a system whereby we have 3 groups normally, where we have one group discussing the sermon, one doing some adult education, and one doing a coffee hour type chat. Today we're going to have just two, because we're combining the sermon discussion and the reading discussion because they're on the same topic. The reading was linked in your order of service and also in channels, but we'll also read it, so you don't need to worry if you haven't read it yet. So please join us at 11:30, and then you can choose which of those two groups you want to join. But for now, please take a deep breath. And settle into this different but still sacred space we share together. Reverend Hillary will lead us into worship.
Good morning. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Anne, for joining me in our sanctuary this morning. And thank you, tech crew, Kai Fast, and Pete Titcomb. And because Sam cannot be with us, he's sent us some music that he recorded and given us a new tech challenge that we will undoubtedly meet this morning to show pre-recorded film and sound. We think it's going to go just fine, but just in case it doesn't, know we're trying the best we can. Be generous with our wonderful tech crew and just enjoy the experiment that we are conducting this year. My friends, no matter who you are or where you're from, no matter what you've done or who you love, no matter if you know the history of the land that you stand upon, or if you don't know anything about the land you stand upon, or if you've never even thought about the land you're on before, you are welcome here, and I am glad you are here. First Universalist, we broadcast our service live to you this morning from our sanctuary at 97 Main Street in Yarmouth, Maine, ancestral land of the Abenaki, the Penobscot, the Mi'kmaq, the Passamaquoddy, and the Maliseet people who united in 1606 to form the Wabanaki Confederacy. These are the people of the first light, the people of the Dawn Land. This area of Maine runs between what was once called the Okosisco and the Aroostookituck. Translated from Abenaki, Okosisco means place of herons, but later came to be understood as the Bay of Helmets due to the presence of Portuguese explorers along the shore. This land is now known as Casco Bay. The Aroostookituck, or River of Rocks Refuge, was home to many subgroups of the Abenaki. We know Aroostookituck now as the Androscoggin. We recognize and acknowledge that we gather today on indigenous land that was taken through deception, coercion, and violence. We acknowledge the continued displacement and oppression of Native people and honor their commitments to survival, identity, and the protection of our earth. Won't you take a moment of quiet with me now to honor these truths and honor this land? Breathing in a deep, refreshing breath into your heart now, the source of healing, of love, of courage, of pain. Take a moment to honor your life. Breathe in and honor the opportunities you are given every day to heal, to love, to be brave, and to come into a restorative relationship with what hurts. First Universalist, it is truly good to be with you this bright morning on this Indigenous Peoples weekend. How good it is to be alive on this sacred land with you, Our service has begun, and we have much sacred work to do. Joyfully now, I invite Ann Turner, our Worship Council Chair, to share our chalice lighting words.
This poem is by Karen Wood, a member of the Monacan tribe in Virginia. Prayer bowl. When the moon is turned upwards like a bowl waiting to be filled, we must fill it. We must fill it by honoring the spirits of creation with songs of our joy and thanks, with foods created with our own hands. Water for the thirsty, prayers for the people, prayers for the spirits, prayers for the Creator, prayers for ourselves, and the sacred instruments that join us to the glory of the world, that join us to the glory of this world, and to the world beyond our sleep.
Please join me in lighting our chalice. We light our chalice in peace and friendship.
Please sing along if you would like. We are singing our opening hymn, number 74, On the Dusty Earth Drum.
Our reading today is a little bit long. I hope that it's interesting, so sit back and relax and listen. It's a reading from the book An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. It's a challenging book. And so at a friend's recommendation, I've been reading the Indigenous People's History of the United States for young people, like me. And so it's a bit easier on the ear. So that's what I'm going to be reading from today. In the late 15th century, as European explorers sailed to unfamiliar places, their actions and beliefs were guided by the doctrine of discovery. The idea that European nations could claim the foreign lands they discovered. The doctrine of discovery was laid out in a series of communications from the Pope, leader of the Catholic Church, who was extremely influential in European politics at the time. It asserted that indigenous inhabitants lost their natural right to that land as soon as Europeans arrived and claimed it. People whose homelands were discovered were considered subjects of the Europeans and were exposed to what the discoverers wished. If they resisted, they were to be conquered by European military action. This enabled Columbus to claim the Taino people's Caribbean home for Spain and to kidnap and enslave the indigenous peoples. Similarly, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, the first groups from England to settle what became the United States, believed they had a covenant with God to take the land. The doctrine of discovery influenced the policies of the young United States and directly affected the lives and the very existence of Native people. However, history textbooks for young people rarely invite students to question or to think critically about that part of the U.S. origin story. Free land, with all its resources, was a magnet that attracted European settlers to the Americas. The word settler is used so frequently that most people do not recognize that it means more than just a person who settles down to live in a place. Throughout history, it has also meant a person who goes to live where, supposedly, no one has lived before. More often than not, settlers have gone to live somewhere that is already home to someone else. They are important to a nation, like Britain or Spain, when it plans to set up colonies in an area. Colonization is the process of taking political and economic control of a region, and colonizers are the people or institutions that are part of that process. The military, business interests, people who go there to live, and sometimes representatives of religious institutions. Because of their key role in establishing and populating a colony, settlers may be called colonists. Settlers who came to what is currently known as North America wanted land for homes, farms, and businesses that they could not have in their home countries. Settlers who used the labor of enslaved Africans wanted limitless land for growing cash crops. Under their nation's flags, those Europeans fought Native people for control of that land. Even when the United States consisted of just a few states on the eastern seaboard, the country's founders fully intended for America to extend from sea to shining sea. In fact, the first law of the new nation was created because of that demand for land. The Continental Congress wrote the Northwest Ordinance in 1787, 2 years before the Constitution was ratified. It allowed settlers to live in Indian territory, west of the Appalachian and Allegheny Mountains. Before that, the British government's proclamation of 1763 prohibited settlement there. In 1801, President Thomas Jefferson described the intent to expand the boundaries of the United States, saying, "It is impossible not to look forward to distant times when our rapid multiplication will cover the whole northern, if not the southern continent, with a people speaking the same language, governed in similar forms and by similar laws. This idea eventually came to be called manifest destiny, the belief that English-speaking Americans were destined to spread their presence and their ideals across the entire continent. Manifest destiny was the banner under which the homelands of Indigenous peoples would be taken.
Thank you, Andrew. My friends, we now come to a time in our service that we set aside for silent prayer and contemplation. As these live stream services are recorded, we will not be sharing our joys and sorrows on Sunday mornings this fall. But if you have a joy, sorrow, or concern to share, please join us for our Wednesday Vespers services on Zoom at 7 p.m. when we have a regular time for sharing. Please also know I'm here to listen and hold your joys and concerns right along with you, so don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to talk. In a moment, we'll enter a time of quiet. This is a time to reflect on the events of the past week, maybe look forward to what may come in the days ahead, or simply be here now, in this moment, and all that it offers us in sensation and emotion. During our time of quiet, I will light 3 candles, one to honor our sorrows, one to celebrate our joys, and one to remind us of this moment that is very alive. So won't you join me now by taking a deep breath, relaxing into your body, and entering into a time of quiet. For all that can be expressed, for all we hold inside, for all that we do not have the words to explain, we hear you, we hold you, and we wish you continued joy, immediate comfort, path forward, and the seeds of peace. Amen.
It's time for our offering. Excuse me. Today's half-plate recipient is the League of Women Voters. The League believes that democratic government depends upon informed participation in government, that every citizen should be protected in the right to vote, and that responsible government should be responsive to the will of the people. The League is a critical partner with First You and with Muson's You the Vote. You're invited to make your offering using the Donate button in the order of worship. By clicking on this link, you'll be taken to Give Butter, a virtual giving site that accepts a card number or PayPal or Venmo account. You may also give your offering by dropping a check in the mail or using your bank's free bill pay feature. While making your offering, enjoy today's offertory by Sam Chandler. This morning's offering has now been requested and will be gratefully received. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, tech crew. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Andrew. My friends, are you familiar with the painting American Progress? You probably know it if you saw it. The work of art, painted by John Gast in 1857, depicts manifest destiny, a toga-clad woman, white as snow, floating above the hills of America. A gold star rests upon her angelic brow. She cradles a school book and a power line coiled in the bend of her right arm. As your eyes follow this wire, you see that her left hand is tenderly guiding it forward from a trail of telephone poles that stretch into the horizon behind her. There lies a port city, shining in the rosy glow of the newly risen sun. Ships and chimneys and trains all chugging away. Behold, the painting says, the bright, beautiful dawn of American progress. Following the narrative of the painting, your attention moves to the left of the frame, the west, a dark mountainous region not yet touched by the industrious rays of the eastern sun. Below the sky and mountains there are figures, humans, animals, and like our angel of progress, they too are moving east to west. The figures from the east are riding stagecoaches, driving yoked cattle, carrying rifles and shovels, waving whips in the air. They move towards the left of the painting, where groups of people, Indigenous people, are fleeing their progress. Some of these people are seated on the ground, seemingly in mourning. Others are turning, axes in hand, to fight. They move westward as well, but in a forced mass migration. Herds of buffalo and wild horses, bear and elk retreat with them into a shadowy wilderness. The brave and brilliant angel of progress seems not to care. Near her feet in the painting lay piles of bones, skeletons of the beings who once inhabited the land she crosses over. She does not look down or look back, only forward. When Christopher Columbus landed on the shores of a western land at the end of the 15th century, there were an estimated 3 million people already living there. The Taínos, which translated means good people, called their land Haiti, or the land of mountains. Their culture was rich, spiritually driven, artistic, musical, and ordered by a government system that was pacifist by nature. 50 years following his arrival on the shores of Haiti, a land Columbus named Hispaniola, or the Spanish island, only 500 of the Taíno people were still alive. This genocide to Columbus and his king, Ferdinand II, was not a bad thing. It was right in line with God's plan, actually. The Catholic monarchs and conquistadors of the late Middle Ages were inspired by the apocalyptic tradition, a belief that the world as it was must end so that another could begin in which God's true will and glory would be revealed. Ferdinand, Columbus, Ponce de Leon, and the like were, of course, blessed by God and living in line with the values of this new world. It was their job to fulfill God's will and bring on the apocalypse to the areas of the world where God's glory had yet to be revealed. Those who didn't survive this revelation, well, they weren't part of that divine plan. Though Thomas Jefferson did not live in a time expressly guided by apocalyptic notions, his statements that Andrew shared in our reading today from an Indigenous People's History of the United States echo the exact sentiments of the Spanish conquistadors. It is impossible not to look forward to distant times, Jefferson fantasized 250 years after the Taíno people were obliterated. Distant times when our rapid multiplication will cover the whole continent, with the people speaking the same language, governed in similar forms by similar laws. Thomas Jefferson was critiqued during his time for his very progressive religious beliefs, beliefs I'll argue that echo the tenets of Unitarianism. Detractors condemned him as an atheist, but nonetheless his vision of a homogeneous America was right in line with the will of God that inspired the conquistadors. One where he and his fellow English-speaking white Christian capitalist brethren were undoubtedly the true good people, and their tireless efforts to colonize the entirety of the American continent was a good thing. I was reintroduced to John Gast's American Progress last October at Soulfire Farm, where I was attending a day-long Uprooting Racism workshop. Soulfire Farm is a Black, Indigenous, people of color-centered community farm committed to ending racism and injustice in the food system. Their mission is to grow and provide life-giving food to people living in food deserts, bring diverse communities together to share skills on sustainable agriculture and spiritual activism, and train the next generation of activist farmers. Leah Penniman, the founder and co-director of Soulfire Farm, was the keynote speaker at the Common Ground Fair 2 weeks ago. As the fair was completely virtual this wild year, you can easily watch her address online, along with many other speeches she's given, if you're curious to learn more about Soulfire's call to liberatory action. You can also purchase her book, Farming While Black, from a local or Black-owned bookstore. Farming While Black is a practical guide to liberation on the land. It is not a text written for white people, but for someone who looks like me, there is much to gain from it. I also just find it helpful to read books wherein I must decenter my experience and my needs, and attempt to learn and celebrate the experiences and needs of others. It's good real-world practice. I'll add that Penniman generously did include a chapter on white people uprooting racism in Farming While Black, which offers practical liberatory guidance for white people like me. Leah Penniman's energy is fierce and ebullient, gentle and tough. Her ancestors are Haitian. I don't know her personally, but I think it's safe to say she is a good person. In fact, I consider her one of the most important activists of this age, as our centuries of environmental and racial violence come to an unavoidable head. Also, if Leah Penniman wasn't powerful enough in her own right, she is the daughter of Reverend Adele Smith Penniman, the first Black woman ordained to Unitarian Universalism. Just drop the mic right there. So as I sat in the main building at Soulfire Farm, listening to a presentation given by farm leaders on the history of land ownership and use in the United States, I paid attention. The first image they projected as they began their presentation, Christopher Columbus's arrival on the shores of Haiti. The second image, John Gast's American Progress. I knew the painting. I'd seen it in American history texts or something in high school. But back then, I think I saw Gast's painting as a relic of an unfortunate but distant past, not a defining image of the American ethos. In the opening presentation of the Uprooting Racism workshop, Soulfire leaders obliterated that notion. They led participants along a timeline of stolen land, stolen people, stolen labor, and environmental oppression that spans from 1492 to this moment, right now, today. American progress is not a relic of the American past. It's a symbol of America. Hoping I could somehow right the wrongs of my high school education, I projected the image of American progress on the board of my environmental literature class a couple months after being at Soulfire. I put it up and asked students, what do you notice? Silence befell the room as the students looked at the painting. One spoke up, Hillary, I don't get it. Is this painting saying we did something bad or something good? I remember being struck by her use of the pronoun we instead of they. Well, back then it was saying we were doing something good. She raised her eyebrows. Wow. My friends, we are alive in a truly revelatory time. A moment when white people especially are being asked to confront a history that for a very long time has been comprised of white people doing good things. Things that actually weren't good. Things that actually caused great irrevocable harm. People who look like me have been asked to confront this history for a long time. But now, for some reason, a vast number of us are finally listening to that plea. Not to get too biblical on you, but one could argue that we have once again found ourselves in an age of apocalypse, a time when one world is ending and a new one is beginning. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, well, it's a lot. Much is being revealed at a very fast pace. And what's our job in an age of an apocalypse? To stick with it, to pay attention, to explore our history, examine it, hold it. We must recognize that what is history is not just history. It's right now, and it will be carried into the future in one way or another. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew what we were carrying so we could pause and ask, is this good? As a white person, I, along with other white people, collectively must acknowledge, honor, and grieve our history and the harm it has done and the good it has done. We must see the skeletons at our feet and understand what killed the being who once lived and breathed with those bones, so we can stop the killing of others with just as much right to live. We must know the land we stand upon, the land we learn upon, fight upon, pray upon, enforce our rules upon. We must know the land we own and ask ourselves, what does it even mean to own land? As a white person, me and my fellow white people, we must decenter ourselves, our needs, our experiences, our good history, and see what else is there. What actual good has been hidden all this time and now truly is trying to be revealed. I'm hopeful, Leah Penniman concludes in her keynote at the Common Ground Fair, smiling wide. I'm really hopeful. Because anything that humans do, I know we can also undo. So let's talk about the strategies for making things right, she says. Penniman then describes the makeup of a transformative ecosystem of resistors and builders, reformers and healers. We need therapy and prayer, she says, art and story and vigilance right now. There's a place for all of you in this work, and there's a place for you in helping with these solutions right now. But regardless of what strategy we take, she concludes, we absolutely must be following the lead of people most impacted by the issues. These are the leaders, these are the folks we defer to, these are the folks we resource, period. Transfer power over to these front lines organizers, she tells us. Transfer resources, transfer dignity. And that's it. She smiles again. That's it. That's how we'll solve a problem of injustice together. Okay? That's it. That's it. Good people of First Universalist. Won't you take a moment of quiet with me now to honor these truths and honor this land? Breathing in a deep, refreshing breath into your heart, your source of healing, of love, of courage and pain. Take a breath and honor your life. Breathe and honor the opportunities you will be given today to heal, to love, to be brave, and to come into restorative relationship with what hurts. Good people of First Universalist. It is truly good to be with you this bright morning. How good it is to be alive on this sacred land with you. We have much sacred work to do. We got this. Let's get to it. Let it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 298. Wake now, my senses. Please listen or sing along if you like. Thank you for joining us for our worship service today. Once again, if you would like to join us for our post-worship coffee hour or our sermon discussion co-led by the Anti-Racist Working Group, please do so. We would love to see you there. But first, a blessing on this day and on the sacred work that we must go do. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all experience profound joy and the causes of profound joy. May those who are free help others to get free. May we all be free. Amen.